We'll have to cap off Week 7 in the NFL, Bears and Patriots. We're going to discuss that game shortly, but first, we wanted to get into a couple of the big storylines that evolved on Sunday that warrant immediate concern and certainly immediate attention for fans and players alike. Principal among those, the arrival of Father Time in the NFL when it comes to four quarterbacks: Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Matt Ryan, all trying to fight the clock. But the saying is true, Father Time is indeed undefeated. Let's start with Ryan. You heard off the top there. I mean, he had the great week last week and then tumbled back to earth quickly this week. He leads the league in interceptions, fumbles, sacks. Colts are just one game back in the division. So, I mean, they're certainly not out of it, but Frank Reich has seen enough. Is this the kind of move, Brady, that might lead a guy into retirement when you're kind of getting shelved?
I mean, maybe, although Matt Ryan's getting paid so much by the Colts. I don't know that I want to necessarily step away and have to give up whatever's owed to me moving forward. So that's the first thing, Danny, when I look at this situation in Indianapolis, where I'm questioning what the thought process is behind this. They paid him a bunch of money to bring him in, obviously gave up some draft picks as well as part of that move. But on top of that, you're not out of the AFC South yet. So why are you giving up on a guy that you're paying a bunch of money to be on your roster to start at quarterback, and now you're benching him? I mean, it's not necessarily all Matt Ryan's fault. The offensive line has not played well this year, which, trust me, Pete Prisco and I have gone over every single week, and you could have put the Colts as a spinning top multiple times. The rushing game hasn't been there. The rushing attack hasn't been there. They seem to have gotten away from Jonathan Taylor, and I don't think that's necessarily Matt Ryan's fault. I think it's a byproduct of their defense not being as good, and maybe even some of the play calling, which Frank Reich's a part of. So this move is puzzling to me at this point in time in the season, unless they feel like Sam Ehlinger gives them a better shot because of his skill set. He's more mobile. They're going to run more RPOs, which if you're looking at the NFL right now and a team like the Philadelphia Eagles who's doing that extremely well, very successful with it, maybe they feel like that's what gives them the best chance to win at this point in time, BK.
This list right here looks like where quarterbacks go to die. I mean, like this, because we've seen a lot of these moves made for quarterbacks to try to revive their careers, and it's been the exact opposite. The careers have gone in the tank. I'm with you. 24 times he's been sacked. Only Joe Burrow has been sacked as many times. I thought this would work because I thought they would run Jonathan Taylor, who was one of the best backs in the NFL last year. Now, he got banged up, so that kind of derails it a little bit, and then I think you get exposed somewhat, but he was healthy last week, and they kind of gave up on him too early. I'm with you because, I mean, Sam Ehlinger is do you see him anything more than a career backup? Like, I don't think he's going to be the guy that comes in just because his skill set. He is more athletic, and maybe there's a model that you build around, sort of like the Eagles have built around Jalen Hurts, but I don't see him throwing for 300 yards a game. Maybe they're trying not to do that.
He had a fantastic preseason. I think he's gotten better and better, kind of waiting for that next opportunity in turn. So maybe they want to give him a shot. The ownership, Jim Irsay, is a big fan of him. At least that's the report that's out there. I think there's that thought, and there's also the conspiracy theory to this. The last time the Colts, if you look at how they've gone about trying to find the heir apparent to really what was Andrew Luck, right? You had Phillip Rivers, you had Carson Wentz, you have Matt Ryan. You're going the veteran route.
Yep. Maybe
they're saying, all right, let's give Sam Ehlinger an opportunity, but if this thing all falls apart, we find ourselves in a position to take a top quarterback in next year's draft. Maybe a C.J. Stroud, maybe a Heisman Trophy winner in Bryce Young, maybe an Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, whoever you're valuing at this point, because that was what essentially happened in 2012 looking for Andrew Luck. You had the suck for luck slogan and all that, and as Peyton Manning was dealing with the neck injury, the Colts kind of were okay with letting that season fall apart so they could assuredly take Andrew Luck. Maybe that's part of the thought process here, too, if you're the Colts.
If that's the process, then maybe I buy it, but it also kind of feels like a Hail Mary from Chris Ballard.
It's too early, too, in the season.
Well, that's
right?
what I think, too. Yeah. But I think Chris Ballard's taken a lot of heat because of these quarterback moves that he's made that haven't worked. I think Frank Reich is taking a lot of heat for the play call, and maybe it feels to me more like a Hail Mary than it seems like a calculated tank move. But if it does work out that way, is there any chance this is more significant that we don't know about an injury to Matt Ryan?
Well, he does have a shoulder sprain.
He does have a shoulder sprain,
That's it?
Yeah.
That's it. It's supposed to be a grade 2 shoulder sprain, which would allow him, even if he was to miss next week or two, still come back at some point.
Right. For Frank Reich to come out and say this is his job for the season, that's pretty remarkable.
And he's not even number 2.
Have to.
He's not even number 2.
Right.
Nick Foles is number 2.
But you know what you have in Nick Foles. Like, that's the reality is they know what they have in Matt Ryan. They know what they have in Nick Foles. I think that's probably really what this is about.
Yeah.
Is what do we have in Sam Ehlinger? Because if this season doesn't work out, if Sam Ehlinger can't bring us back to be able to win the division and compete for a playoff spot, then they might find themselves in the position to take one of those top quarterbacks in the draft. And if that's the case, don't you want to know what you have in Sam Ehlinger? Like, I don't hate this move. I love Sam Ehlinger as a Texas quarterback. He's tough. He's smart. He's had some time to be seasoned and developed. He's got that athletic, combination of skills that I think would work well with the way this offensive line's playing. That may help Jonathan Taylor emerge too as a better running back. So I'm curious to see what comes from all of this, but it's probably too to see what they have in him, honestly, instead of just moving on to another draft pick when you feel really good about a guy you have waiting in the wings.
So let's talk about the other three quarterbacks that we mentioned, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. I mean, all of them have gotten off to struggling starts this season. Which of those three, Brady, do you think is most likely to rebound and get back to near top form?
I would say Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Bucs. And reason being is, to me, they've dealt with a number of injuries at wide receiver, the offensive line. At some point, they're going to put it together. I mean, they haven't had quite as many moving parts as the Packers have, for example, in losing Devontae Adams or Russell Wilson with injuries and the fact that you're in a new city, new offense, everything's new for Russell. So those are more explicable. I don't know that that's the case for Tom Brady right now. And I'll be honest with you, Danny, people ask all the time, hey, what's going on with the Bucs? I can't tell you. And trust me, if I could, maybe I'd be on that staff right now because it's hard to understand why their offense has sputtered for so long. Now, Tom Brady has not looked the same. He obviously has missed some time from time to time. That's part of it. But he's played so much football at this point. I don't think that's it. And I don't think it's that his body's getting old, he's not responding. There's a disconnect there with the entire team, especially when you see a guy like Mike Evans drops what would have been an easy touchdown this past week. So they're just off, and it's hard to put your finger on what exactly that is.
I don't know if anyone I feel confident in returning to MVP form, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers, back-to-back MVP. Tom Brady the last couple of years has thrown for 5,000 yards. I don't know if we see that version of any of them, but that's not what they're looking for. All they want is one more opportunity to get that next ring. And I still think Tom Brady is positioned best to get that. They're sitting atop the division because the division is garbage. And they still have that in their sights. The problem with Green Bay is they got Minnesota Vikings sitting up there, pretty firm grasp, but they're 5-1 right now. So they have a firm lead in there, 2 games up. That to me concerns for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron's deal, and we're going to talk about this, about the trade deadline moves. Both of them, like Mike Evans dropped the pass. I mean, Amari Rodgers had a chance to make a play. Aaron Rodgers is still putting the ball in good position. I think they're realizing how much they missed Devontae Adams, or at least a seasoned veteran playmaking wide receiver that they are severely lacking with a lot of youth and experience.
I think some of the issues with Green Bay, too, it's not so much around Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
It's, hey, they still can't stop the run. That's always been the Achilles heel of this team. Yeah. And, wide receiver hasn't emerged, but they're not running the football that well either. So, by and large, coming into the season, I was one of those guys who was looking at saying this should be the best defense they have, especially with the draft capital they devoted that side of the ball. And with Aaron Rodgers coming off back-to-back MVP seasons, it didn't seem like he was slowing down anytime soon. But I was also banking on some of these young guys stepping up, and that just hasn't been the reality for the Packers.
So when you look at this situation with Brady, and Danny, I wanted to kind of hit on what you were talking about. It just seems like there's a problem. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily think that it's a trade issue. I think they need to get into a room and have a very frank discussion issue. I mean, you guys are former pro quarterbacks. You know what the dynamics are amongst the teams. What were your thoughts when you saw Brady yelling at his offensive lineman?
He's always had a pretty nasty sideline demeanor. He's not afraid to chew out his guys. But at that time, he's there for an entire offseason. He's bought in. He's all in. He's first guy there, last guy to leave. Now he's not. There is a significant distraction here. I know every player has issues in their personal lives they have to go through, but I think Tom Brady, and there's a disconnect, and maybe it's somebody that's the friction that he needs. Maybe it was Bruce Arians. And I don't want to put it all on Todd Bowles because the defense is actually doing okay. The problem's on the offensive side of the ball, but somebody needs to step up. Bill Belichick, remember with Alex Guerrero, somebody has to step up and say, no, you can't. We need to do things a certain way. You can have some preferential treatment, but you can't have everything. Something is missing there from a leadership standpoint. It's one thing to be chewed at from the greatest of all time, but it's another thing to be chewed out by a guy who's not there on Wednesdays, who wasn't there for 11 days in camp, who isn't performing at that MVP level. Then it kind of rubs you the wrong way, and then you don't respond to the chewing out.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Robert Hainsey spoke out about it and said, look, we love that. We like when Tom's hard on us and they're hard on themselves. I don't know if it's so much that. I do wonder about the Bruce Arians impact and that figure you're talking about who's saying, yeah, we understand you're Tom Brady, you're the greatest of all time, but you got to be one of the guys on the team. We can't allow you to go to Robert Kraft's wedding and miss a walkthrough and fly separate from the team, or take 10 days off in the middle of the camp. We can't allow you to do that. And whether or not anyone's willing to admit it, it is in the back of a lot of those players in the locker room's mind that hey, if we're in here doing the work, you got to be in here with us. You're our leader. You're the guy we look to in times of adversity. So if you're not following the same path we are, what are we supposed to think? So I do think that plays an element of it. But also Bruce Arians just as an offensive mind.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not down there on the field anymore sitting with Byron Leftwich talking about some of the play calls, listening on the headset. Regardless of how involved he was in the past, because he always gave credit to Byron Leftwich, there's still that element of Bruce Arians not being there right now. And I think that might be playing a factor too in some of the offense sputtering and maybe the lack of adjustments they were seeing throughout the course of a game.
So we talk about the disconnect with Brady and his team, perhaps. How do you explain the Russell Wilson situation then in Denver and that offense, which has just been terrible?
Well, and look, and it's been a byproduct to me of a lot of things, right? Russell Wilson's had the lat issue, then he's got the hamstring issue. He's learning a new system too with Nathaniel Hackett calling the plays. And look, I'll be honest with you. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett looks like he's in over his head.
Yeah.
And it's a first-time head coach. You go back through his history as an offensive coordinator. He wasn't overly successful in Buffalo, wasn't overly successful in Syracuse. You really have to go back to his time as the Green Bay Packers, but he wasn't calling the plays. That was Matt LaFleur. So I think there's a learning process for all parties involved, and everyone's kind of getting exposed right now, almost like they haven't been prepared to take on what's going to be, well, at least we thought would be a more competitive AFC West. The Chiefs look great, but can't say that really for anyone else in the division. But so far, a team that, to me, is sputtering and now dealing with injuries is playing a factor in all of this.
I think other teams should take note as far as hiring practices, because we've seen a couple coordinators that were coordinators for incredible quarterbacks. Adam Gase you got his job because he was Peyton Manning's offensive coordinator. We're seeing what you're seeing now in Nathaniel Hackett.
He was at least calling plays, though.
Yeah, for sure. But you have to be a leader of grown men. Josh McDaniels, another one. He, coordinated for Tom Brady. He gets opportunities. A second opportunity. You have to be a leader of men to go out there. And I'm with you. To me, Russ is learning a new system. That's part of it. But I totally agree with you that Nathaniel Hackett's in over his head. When he botches the first late game situation in Seattle, game 1 of the year, and then doesn't have a great explanation for it after, and, decides to kick a 64-yard field goal and doesn't let it, and then is pressured, so goes and hires an in-game analyst middle of the season, and then tries to blame him when they put it on Russ's shoulders and doesn't make the plays. It just to me looks like he's all over the map, and he needs to be more certain about what he's doing and why he's doing it, and he's just kind of waffling, and that is a bad look. And players will see right through it.
Don't forget, he was hired before the new ownership took over the Walton family there in Denver. That was George Payton's hire. They hired him. Then ownership that took over there in Denver. So you do have to wonder what the temperature is of the Walton family in witnessing all of this after you just spent a lot of money to purchase a team and you're already agreed to a big deal with a quarterback that's not looking like they're on the same page right now. So that would be a big-time concern for me moving forward. I wouldn't be shocked if you don't see some personnel changes on their staff come the bye week. I don't think there's going to be a fire sale of guys being traded away from this roster. I think they understand if they start playing to their capability, they should be able to compete and win. And again, they're not out of it necessarily, but they do have to start putting this thing together soon.
NFL trade deadline coming up on November the 1st. So let's talk about some possible fixes here. Brady, if you're the Buccaneers, what kind of deal are you making? Do you think they need to make a deal?
Let me start off by just saying this. In the NFL, to me, if you're looking at the trade deadline for someone to come in and be a hero like we see in other professional sports leagues, good luck. You might as well take a penny, say a wish, and throw it into a fountain, because that's not how this works. I mean, if you need offensive line help, which you can make the case, they got some injuries in Tampa up front, no one's giving away a premium offensive lineman during the season. That's a scarce commodity. Those guys are hard to come by. You can't find that there. And maybe there's some other instances of teams that want to look to start rebuilding and they're willing to give up a guy who's going to be a big cap hit the following year, and you can rent him for a year, and then he's your problem after that. But you're not going to find that quick fix to be able to solve all your issues. The one thing you'd say looking at Tampa right now is they're the worst running football team in the NFL. So you could go look for some guys that, like Cam Akers, for example, seems to be on the outs there in LA. Why not you go talk to them, even though it seems like the Rams don't like those picks. Why don't you see if you potentially can't go get him? Melvin Gordon. He's obviously had some fumbling issues in Denver. They bring in Latavius Murray. He's getting a little bit more burn time. Maybe he's a guy you want to go look at. Or David Montgomery in Chicago. They've already got Khalil Herbert there. He's done a good job. Maybe they would say, all right, let's go talk to the Bears. They're having a great season. They'd be willing to give up some draft picks in exchange for a guy like David Montgomery. So those are some other backs that I think could complement Leonard Fournette well, and maybe that helps improve the rushing attack to provide a little bit more balance for the Bucs.
Okay, so Danny, looking at the Green Bay Packers and that situation, and when we talk about them being a couple games back of the Minnesota Vikings, and obviously struggles there on offense, but when you look at the Packers team, I mean, what kind of a deal would you be looking at November 1st?
I'd be looking at some help in the wide receiving core. I put out Kendrick Bourne as a potential option with the Patriots, but there is a name that's out there that is still rehabbing, and a guy who just won a Super Bowl with the LA Rams. That would be Odell Beckham Jr., and I do think that he would provide the stability, the type of hands, the playmaking ability that Aaron Rodgers would thrive with. And so I do think it's a good fit, assuming that he is healthy. Now, I don't know, the date has been kind of murky as far as when he's available, but if he's available, the sooner the better. I'd almost say rather than give up something and a trade to wait and sign somebody off the street, that you get him in, start, and even if it's a couple weeks away, get him in, start learning the system, go through walkthroughs so that the minute he is healthy enough, he can step right into that system.
We got a few other names. We've seen Carolina, obviously. They traded away Robbie Anderson.
Yep.
They traded away Christian McCaffrey. Why not go knock on the door? Say, hey, you want to part ways with DJ Moore? What can we give up in order to get a guy like that? We want to maximize this window of opportunity with Aaron Rodgers, whether it's this year or for the foreseeable years. So DJ Moore might be at the top of my list because of his capability. I think what he could be in that offense. And also, he's a veteran receiver. He's not a younger guy that you're trying to get up to speed like a Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs. Jerry Jeudy's one that, you might want to knock on the door and say, hey, Denver, how you feeling about things right now?
Right.
Brett Rippon started. We don't know if Rippon will end up playing in the game in London or if it will be Russell Wilson, but maybe they're willing to part ways with where things are right now. You bring in a guy like Jerry Jeudy and see if you're not able to get on the same page with him quick. And then finally in Pittsburgh, obviously not off to the season that I think Mike Tomlin and the Steelers had hoped. You're playing Kenny Pickett now. You hate to give away some of his targets, but they've done a good job of drafting guys. So if you could, maybe part ways with Chase Claypool, send him into Green Bay, you get some draft picks in exchange for that. That'll work for probably
the George Pickens too.
Right, and that'll work for both parties. So a few other names, I think, if you're going to look to the trade market. Again, the hard thing is you're looking at a quarterback who's not on the same page with the guys who've been there all offseason. Then you want to bring in another new face and think he's going to get up to speed. It's tough to do.
Yeah, and the NFL trade deadline is mentioned November 1st, so we could see some wins. But I mean, to Brady's point, it's hard to find that guy that's going to put you over the hump. Yeah,
so much practice, so much chemistry. It takes time to build that. And that's why it's usually hard to find a guy who's going to make an immediate impact.
Brady Quinn, Danny Kanell here to do the heavy lifting on this edition of the Football Happy Hour here on CBS Sports HQ. And every Tuesday night, our guys from the inside the NFL breaking down highlights, offering fantastic analysis of the week's games. The show has been part of the culture of the game since 1977. The current crop of stars, James Brown, Phil Simms, Ray Lewis, Brandon Marshall, and Julian Edelman, only adding to it. You can watch Inside the NFL every Tuesday night, streaming on Paramount+.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.